BBC-B, RML480Z, 380Z and Nimbus microcomputers. These files are for use with the data retrieval packages Inform or Quest. They can be ordered from the Education Department, Anglia Television, Norwich, NR1 3JG. The price is £15. Please specify the appropriate computer and data retrieval package. Further details from your local ITV education officer.
Hello. Any animal you care to think about, people if you like, are at their most vulnerable, they're most open to danger in the early stages of their development. Now, a lot of these animals recognize this, and so they build for themselves. These are the animal builders, and we're going to look at animal builders now. Animals that make things out of what they find lying about, like a bird's nest. Let's begin with hummingbirds, the smallest birds in the world, all living in America. This one's a copper-rumped emerald hummingbird, quite common in the mountain forests of Trinidad. And here it's building its nest in the bamboo, the very favorite place, joint between the bamboo, a nice, secure anchor point to begin with. And the material are small plant fibers all woven together, but the secret of it that holds it so strongly together are spiders' webs. Hummingbirds eat a great many spiders as well as feeding on the nectar from plants, and the spider's web is the key to the whole construction. It even allows it to stick little bits of lichen on here as an added camouflage. But when you look at a nest like this, tiny though it may be, it's a simple construction. Basically, it's no different from the blackbird's nest or the robin's nest you find in a road and garden. Just a typical little bird's nest, albeit a very tiny little nest for an extremely tiny little bird. But I want you to look at something a very great deal more complicated. What we've got here are weaver bird's nests. It's a very common little bird all over Africa. You see thousands of them. They're closely related to our house sparrows. And they build nests with what looks like raffia. It's palm fronds and grass. And I've been playing around with this raffia just to try and work out how they do it. And whenever I've had one of these nests in my hand, I've tried to work it out, but I've come to the conclusion that they're very much better at it than I am. They seem to start with something like a clove hitch and then put a few round turns on other things, and in the end it develops into some sort of a cat's cradle. But they've got a very good beak for doing all this with, and they can hang on with one hand and use the other one. But to look at the nest, I've sketched one here sitting in its nest. They'll pick up a fork like that of a tree hanging down and build, first of all, a loop into it. Then sometimes they'll take a horizontal twig like that and they'll build, again, their loop into that, having made some very good sailor-like fastenings, some clove hitches to start with and hang it all on. But let's have a look at a film of weavers, because they'll show you far better than I can just exactly how they set about the job. Now, here's our weaver making a beginning. It looks just like a clove hitch that he started with. A strong piece of grass or palm frond there to start making a sling. Both feet and bill in use. And it's the male that does all this building, and it's inseparably linked with his courtship, because he's building this nest to attract a female. Later on, if he does attract one, she'll take it over and do the lining. Watch him pass that through and lean around and pull it right out, just exactly what I do when I try and sew on a button. They make mistakes as well. And all the time he's building this nest, he'll be looking out for females. He'll also be looking out for old nests that he can rob material from, just like sparrows. If he doesn't get a female as a result of this prowess, he'll, as often as not, pull a nest to pieces and start all over again. If he does find a female, he'll mate with her and he'll go off and start building another nest. There they go. The entrance at the bottom, a sort of funnel at the side, but they're communal builders, the weavers. Let's look at a real loner. Also in Africa, and a thorn acacia, it's the penduline tit. A nest all on its own, even more closely woven than a weaver's nest, made out of animal hairs and very small vegetable fibers. But look closely at the nest. Now, you'd never believe that was the entrance. You're meant to think that there's a false entrance underneath. He looks in that false entrance perhaps to make other things think that that is the real entrance. If you put your hand in there, you would think the nest was empty. So would other predators. But the cunning little thing just pulls it down and slides in the letterbox top. He's in and out all the time now, feeding young, and then he closes it up with his head behind so that you just don't spot it there. But what we're looking at now is a female and not a bird at all, a harvest mouse. She's a pregnant female. The pregnant females only build these beautiful nests in standing corn or in meadows and hedges. Here she's shredding down a leaf with her teeth. A half-inch wide leaf will give her 15 strands. And you see, she hasn't stopped it growing. It'll stay green as long as the corn stays green and help to conceal the nest. And all the loops she's using are knitting loops. It's rather interesting because human pregnant females, they also do a lot of knitting. And in there she'll go, and finally she'll line it with seed down and the finest strands of vegetation to finish it off. She works away, and it'll take her most of the day to do it. It's a very much more comprehensive woven structure than the little resting nests that the males make for themselves. And when it's all finished, she'll settle down and have 3 to 5 naked, pink, helpless little children that'll take about 2 weeks to be able to look after themselves. I've got a little nest here of a harvest mouse. It's an old one, and it's rather a beat-up little nest, but it does show the general construction of it. Little hole in the side here. Of course, it's been worn away because it's raised a brood of young, and it may even have been through a combine harvester. They're so strong they can survive this. They'll come through and be flattened out, but the structure of the nest is so good it holds together. Unfortunately, whatever was in it wouldn't be so lucky. Now, all the animal builders we've looked at up to now have been building for themselves or for a pair. They've been weavers too, but we're looking at something quite different. Communal builders and their tailors. These are tailor ants in Australia, and they're knitting together or tailoring together the outer ends of living mangrove leaves to make an ant community. Now, the fascinating thing about these adult worker ants is that they've no means of spinning silk. But their grubs have, because their grubs spin silk to pupate in. And these ants will carry a grub around using it like a huge tube of glue. And they'll stick the ends of the leaves together with it. You can't see this, you've got to take my word for it. It's all going on inside. Meanwhile, the ants work to unite the ends of the leaves. If they're too wide, then they'll make an ant chain, and 2 or 3 of them will drag it together. And then those inside will trundle round and squeeze out the little larvae and stick it together with the silk. Here's silk in use again, this time a Chinese oak silk moth. It's spinning its cocoon, uniting 2 oak leaves and uniting them with silk. Now, the silk comes out of spinnerets, actually out through the mouth, but it's formed in glands inside the head. It's dried saliva, if you like. It's liquid when it comes out, and it dries in the air. And as she rolls about inside that framework made of the oak leaves, she passes out the silk crisscross and gradually unites the leaves together to make a perfect cocoon. greatly magnified. It's quite easy to follow what she's doing. If it's speeded up a little bit, the whole action is even more exciting and even easier to watch in a strange sort of a way. She's really dashing it off now with the speeded up film. There's another one going, uniting the oak leaves. And then as soon as that pupa is finished, the whole change will take place within that, and the caterpillar will grow into an adult, and it'll emerge out of that cocoon, and it'll emerge as a beautiful adult moth. And that's the moth that comes out, a beautiful Chinese oak silk moth. But it's not the one that's used commercially for making silk. That's the mulberry silk moth. And here's a cocoon of the mulberry silk moth, quite small. If you slough off this outer edge, inside there's a continuous filament of silk over half a mile long. There's between 2 and 3 miles of silk in the cocoon as a whole. And here's a commercial hank of silk made from 8 of these spun together in an industry which has been going on in China for 4,000 years. From the silk industry to the eiderdown industry. It's by no means such a long-lived industry. It started in Iceland just about 1,000 years ago, when Iceland was first discovered by visitors from Europe, who had already understood a little bit about eiderdown first. Eiderdown basically is the soft down from the eider's breast that she plucks herself and uses it to line the nest and help to insulate the eggs, to keep a nice even temperature going. Notice the female is rather cryptically marked because she's sitting there and she's camouflaged. Now there's the down, and that little down is the subject of a harvest. You see, the drake bird is black and white and quite easily seen. It's the female that has to keep out of sight. You glimpse into the nest there, the eggs nestling in the down, so that when she's off, they preserve an even temperature. Well, now the Icelanders make harvesting eiderdown quite a family occasion. Children love it because their little hands are great for getting in underneath and getting out just the right amount of down, because these Icelanders know just how much you can harvest. You mustn't take too much or the eggs will get cold. But from June onwards, they take a little bit and put it in the bag. And the ducks don't seem to mind. In fact, this industry works both ways, because the ducks have been protected for the industry for over 700 years in Iceland, and the industry protects the ducks because the farmers keep their natural predators at bay. So all through this incubation period, they wander around the colony of breeding ducks, taking little bits of down. Of course, later on, the eggs will hatch, the ducks will go, and then it's possible to take the whole lot. And there the harvest is complete. The eiderdown industry for warmth and comfort in human homes. We've looked at nothing but homes lately, haven't we? Animal homes. We're going to look at something different now. We're going to look at an animal builder that's building a trap. The animal's a very common one, the orb web spider, very common in the gardens. And it's building a trap. There'll be a home associated with it, but the trap is what it's doing now. Very much speeded up. Round and round it goes, until the fatal web is complete. Then off to the corner to lurk. That's how it's done. Let's look at it again. We'll get the spider to unwind it so that we can study it even more carefully. Right around to the outer edges. Now, the hardest part to watch is this early beginning. That bit. Here's how she makes a beginning. We've got a couple of bushes standing here, very roughly drawn, and she goes to about this point, and she flies out a long thread with a little fan on the end like a kite, and that goes with the wind, and it hooks up, say, here. She's now established the bridge, as it's called. She'll then walk out along the bridge, and she'll drop straight to the ground. When she gets to the ground, she'll walk a few paces to one side at right angles to the bridge because she wants to cant the whole trap. I'll tell you about that later. She then climbs up to this point, and as she climbs up, she eats the thread she has dropped down on and tensions it up behind so that she finishes up with 3 spokes like that. And now she's got the basis of it. From then on, she can, at her own leisure, put the spokes out wherever she wants and start from the outside, spinning inwards right towards the middle where she's got her trap. And then she pops off to lurk up here somewhere. That's really how it's done. Now, with this time-lapse photography, it's too quick to see, but we can at least see how the rings are made. Now, she's got 2 kinds of silk. She spins outwards with dry silk, and she spins inwards with sticky silk. The sticky silk is the trap. I told you it was canted at an angle. That's so that she can hang back from the sticky silk that would catch her up just as well as it would catch anyone else up. But now look at something quite different. An animal that just has to keep out of the light in perpetual darkness. These are termites that we're looking at, and that big thing up in the tree is the earth that's carried up and stuck with spit out there. But let's have a look at a termite itself. This is a worker. They look like ants, but they're not. They're much more closely related to cockroaches. Now, that's the worker, and here is a soldier termite. Now, there's very little difference in the size, except that the soldiers are a little bit thinner. But on the front, 6 legs, on the front they've got enormous jaws, and some of them have got a sort of spray gun that squirts acid. And the important thing is, as you'll see later, that their heads are very dark, nearly black. So we'll have a close look at that, see how we get on. Here's a termite tree on a tree in Trinidad. Make a little break there in the walkway up to it and immediately see what happens. The soldiers are first on the scene. See the black heads and the nozzles for squirting the acid? They're straight into the breach to protect it, waiting for the workers to come and make good the damage. There's the first worker on the scene. Big, fat one without a black head. And bit by bit, they'll build that up. Now, if the more severe damage, and you get right through to the Queen's chamber, the activity's intense. That huge thing that looks like a captive zeppelin is the Queen. Just a great egg-laying machine laying 30,000 eggs a day. And all the activity to make good the damage, speeded up, but mighty active for all that. And the breach is closed, and the termite is safe and secure again. A perhaps more familiar builder to us is a wasp. After a winter's hibernation, you see queen wasps out in the early part of the summer, building the first nest. A mixture of spit and chewed wood bark, making a product almost exactly like the sort of paper we write letters on. And here she is fashioning it round, making a pot, rather like a coil pot that they teach you when you're making your first pots at school. When she's got her nest complete, she'll make some cells in it, just a few cells, and lay an egg in each. Grubs will hatch from those eggs, and the queen will begin to feed those grubs. There they are, moving around, and she's tending them. Now, the cameraman has made a little hole in the side so we can see all this. And the queen wasp has realized what's going on. So she decides that she can take a little bit of time off from looking after the grubs to start repairing that hole. And there she goes to it with the spit and the chewed up bark, closing it up to a rare pace. Now, that nest will soon be about the size of a football, layer upon layer, hundreds, thousands of grubs. It'll grow into the traditional wasp's nest. There'll be wasps chasing after your jam at tea time at the end of the summer. But remember, wasps don't live on jam. Wasps are very helpful carnivores that eat a lot of garden pests. Well, we've looked at lots of different sorts of animals, builders, but they've all been animals that have picked things up, woven things together, stuck them with silk, all that kind of thing. There are some animal builders, though, that we haven't looked at. I can't help thinking of snails, because they're builders, but actually their shell grows on them. It's an altogether different thing. We'll look at it another time. Goodbye.